Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Dublin Tech Talks. Joined today by Simone Crowley and Gerard Fitzgerald, VP of Product Design at Workhuman and newly appointed, congratulations, Design Ops Manager. So, yeah, great to have you here. Really just kind of keen to promote different disciplines within technology. I think there's a lot of research, around automation and AI and how, the future of, the human role in technology is, leaning towards the creative and less away from the programmatic. So, yeah, I guess just if you want to introduce yourselves, tell us about the work you do, maybe, what is product design? I think everyone jumps on the design word, but in the context of a product organization, a software organization, what's the role of product design?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, my name is Ger. I'm the Vice President of Product Design at Workhuman, and I've been at the company for 10 years. Just gone past last November there, which has been quite a journey. It's been incredible. And we have 44 designers, I want to say, on the product design team, and it's split across a number of different areas, right? So we have UX and UI, we have research, design ops, which is Simone has stepped into lead, vision and strategy, and branding. So that kind of encapsulates product design at Workhuman. But specifically, I describe product design as the practice where we're trying to solve problems for users. So thinking about the end-to-end design process, right from conceiving the idea, understanding what the requirements are, following that all the way through the full process to iteration, to testing, and then effectively releasing that. And I think a really important part of product design is around thinking about not just the end user experience, but from a business perspective. As designers working within the organization, how are we driving the goals of the business and the strategy of business as well? Yeah. So it's kind of a conduit between the user needs and the business needs and merging them together. And then
the collaboration with engineering, I guess, is crucial there, right? And it's like it's being at the front of those conversations so that you can influence decisions earlier, I guess, because, I can suspect the user may want to take you in one direction where, the engineering team may have a different plan in place at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even within Workhuman, there was a time when the team used to be isolated, if you like, away from the actual development teams and the product team. So we used to have our own little area, our own little corner in the office, and that's where the design team would sit. But now we're distributed across all of the teams. So each designer, each UX and UI designer sits within their own development team. So they're working so closely with the likes of engineering. They're working really closely with product as well. And that forms a really good relationship and understanding and collaboration around what they're actually trying to achieve. So that's the way we switched that up, I would say, now about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's worked really well. And we've seen so many organizations as well within the industry start to shift towards a model like that as well.
And is it a good entry point? Because if we think of access for women into technology careers and less of an interest perhaps in school goers, secondary school women in terms of hard coding and heavy maths kind of disciplines, engineering disciplines. What's the, like, when you're looking at talent, maybe Simone, you could jump in here as well. Like, what are the considerations? Is it the creativity and design aspect? Like, what's the role of technology and an interest in being part of a technology organization in, how someone might think about a career in this area?
Yeah, we've had, what's really interesting working, we've had actually a lot of internal mobility changes as well. So we've had a lot of interest, let's say, from other departments in the organization, joining the product design team. There's been a real curiosity and an interest around what we do. And I think a lot of that as well has spurred from some of the events that we ran with Design Fest and so on within the organization. So we've definitely seen that. And I think a lot of that has to do with how you're advocating for design, not just within the organization, but outside the organization as well. So we've seen a lot of, I think we've had 3 or 4 females within Workhuman from other departments like operations, from HR, that have actually gone back to study design after having a real, want to join the team and want to get into product design. And they've just flourished ever since they've joined. And it's just been an incredible journey to actually see them, on that kind of journey. So it's been really cool. And
what was your career path into this area?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So I'd be kind of technically minded. I think, I've got a diploma in web development. I code. I started out, I studied animation years and years ago, so there was no such thing as software product design back then. So I did 2D hand-drawn animation out in Dunleary, and then I kind of found my way into e-learning. So I learned HTML, learned when CSS came out, then learned CSS, and I kind of got into Flash animation that way, and coded and that. So from that, I did kind of exactly what some of those other women did. I retrained. I got interested in UX. I worked as a graphic designer, worked as a web designer, worked in print, worked in many jobs, did motion graphics. So yeah, I kind of find my way into software that way.
It's funny actually, just as Simone was talking there, my background's not design at all, it's engineering. Like I studied engineering in college, and when I left I worked at IBM for a year and I was doing some programming, but I'd always had a huge interest in design. So I was kind of self-taught from early on. In college I was messing around with like design applications, and then when I kind of left college, then I kind of went into that area myself. But from a technical perspective, I have a more technical background, but I did in tech than I did in design, but then obviously evolved as we went.
And do you think so? Is it would it like diversity counts for everything, right? In terms of better teams, better outcomes. Do you think a mix of technical, disciplines and backgrounds, and then creative, that's important?
100%. Yeah. Even when you think about the team that we have, or 44 on the team, they come from so many different backgrounds. Like we've some who come from more agency-like backgrounds. We've some that are more technical. We've some that are more focused on UI. Obviously, some are focused on research and the psychology around that. So you really, when you bring a whole team together like that with really strong insights and skills, respectively, it's really beneficial for the team, and obviously what we're trying to do as a company as well.
Sorry, Simone, it actually ties in nicely. We're going to be talking with Anthony Quigley, who was the founder of the UX Institute, where you went back to train. Did you find it easier as a professional then to kind of re-engage with education that way, or would you have done that if you had to leave work and do it full time? Yeah,
so I did an advanced research course there, but I did fundamentals out in Dún Laoghaire. I did kind of almost a master's level out there. I found it, I really wanted to go back full time, but obviously you can't afford that when you're working. I found it was really tough. Like it was very heavy on I suppose reading. Like there was a lot of there was a thesis and there was all sorts. So we had to do a dissertation.
Oh, I don't want to hear those words again.
I was thinking this. We had an access route into this, but you've just you've ruled it out there.
Yeah, and coming from animation, like I did for my degree, I made a film. Yeah. So, and like a very small dissertation. So it was very new to me to be back kind of studying. And I found it quite difficult. But I really enjoyed it. Like enjoyed the subject matter, enjoyed the course out there, the teacher. And we did lots of group projects, which is really good for UX as well, just to kind of be involved. We did lots of user research. And then I had been working, so I had work experience as well. So I was working in a mobile app where we used to have users come in every Tuesday. I had a great mentor there. She taught me like a lot of the stuff that I know. And then I moved into different jobs. So so it was good.
That's interesting, because I was thinking, when you think of, say, a designer, you mentioned, web design or graphics or animation. So when you look at the skill set across like a product design team, like a smaller organization, I suspect would have to have, multi-skilled people who can do bits of everything. And we'll come on to scale and how you have to put some structure around a product design operation as you scale. But it can't just be all the fun design work, right? There's process, documentation, structure, right? It's like, or do you have people who, lean into those skills, and then people who pick up the pieces and make it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people love documentation. They absolutely live for it.
You're talking to one.
So me included. Very well, I love design ops. Some people just love it. But there are different skills. Like obviously with like over 40 people, we have a range of skills, and we have a community of practice as well, where we kind of share our skills and we do knowledge sharing and we chat about it. And, it's trying to, help people who maybe don't like documentation so much, like show them how you do it. Do you know that way? So it's a lot of it is kind of teaching each other and learning off each other.
When I think back to 2012 when I joined Workhuman, it was a little bit like the Wild West. Like it's just a small team, and you're just kind of like, you're kind of making it up as you kind of go, and you're trying to figure stuff out. But obviously as you mature, the company matures, the team matures, you have to put in the rigor, you have to put in the processes, because that's what keeps the team together, keeps the team stable, keeps us delivering the content we need to deliver. So that's a really good point. So
just as a kind of precursor to talking about scale and systems that you might need to have in place. So you've recently taken on a new role, which is design ops. Seems to be a trend, right? Sticking ops on the end. But what does that mean, and why is that needed, particularly as organizations start to scale? And maybe there's someone in a product design role at the moment, thinking about where to go next. And is it just a more senior lateral or linear move up a channel, or what is this area, and why should people be researching it?
Yeah, well, it's a very new discipline for me. I remember when Ger asked me to head up the department, I might have had a little bit of a freak out. Bit of imposter syndrome kicks in because it's very new to me. And the way I tackled that is like I tackle it with any design problem, like I research it. So I did a course with NNG, and they'd be kind of, one of the top, I suppose, people for that. And then I looked into how do you bring that as your scale, as you say, like how do you bring that into the operation? So it's talking to everyone. Like I did some online research as well. I was watching lots of YouTube videos that are out there. And a lot of people were saying to do like a listening tour to kind of just actually talk to everyone on the team to kind of see what the issues are, where the opportunities are. Just even like a skills mapping exercises, which I'm doing as well with the listening tour. It's like a discovery tour, just chatting to everyone and just understanding fundamentally that baseline of where we are. And then how we can support them. And
what are the principles? Like what are the outcomes that you're trying to impact with a role like this in a scaling org?
Yeah, so be communication, like transparency to the team, making sure everyone like understands where they are, like in the strategy, where they overall the whole product and the platform where they stand. That community practice that we just spoke about. So skills training, making sure we're talking to each other, breaking down silos. We're also looking at, metrics, design maturity, trying to understand getting that consistency of design, getting the design process, making sure everyone in different product areas are kind of, I suppose, on the same page. Like there's very different in different product areas.
There's a big list of things. Yeah, the remit of design ops is massive. Like, so when we were discussing the role towards the end of last year, we kind of had to really think about, okay, well, what is it we're trying to drive? What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? But we had to be very specific about what's realistic in Q1 and Q2. And we have a plan in place and we have a roadmap for how we're going to roll that out. But you need to be really disciplined like that, because otherwise it's just going to be overwhelming.
And is that a consequence of people being embedded into different teams? So they're being pulled in different directions? Is it about like corralling everything and making sure that, you're not losing any of that shared knowledge in the team because people are out, in different product areas? Is that part of it?
It is a bit, because really one of the main kind of like missions, if you like, of design ops is to let designers design. And that's what they're focused on, and take away a lot of the distractions that just come with the day-to-day operations of managing the team and making the team function. Like Simone was saying, around the community of practice and around our tools and our processes. But also, if you have somebody leading that, there's consistency then that's brought in, there's ownership, there's authority around that, which really helps. So that's a huge part of what Simone is going to bring as she steps into this role.
And was that a need that came out of the scale when you kind of sat down and went, okay, what do I do really well? What do I need? What does the team need to get to be better? Or was that, how did that come about? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a role I've wanted to have in place the last 3 years, to be honest, because as we begin to scale bigger and bigger, that's when I started to see the kind of need to bring dedication into this role, just so we could manage it more effectively. And we've seen that as well with other companies like Intuit and Spotify and Netflix. Now they've all grown. Some of them have maybe one person managing design ops, but some have teams. Some have big teams of people who are doing it. But yeah, absolutely, there was definitely a need for it. There was challenges, I think, that were coming up from the scale of the team that we kind of need to get a handle on. And I think a lot of what Simone will do in stepping into this role will just help bring a bit of clarity, a bit of focus, and a bit of glue around everything that we do.
And what advice would you have for if there's someone out there working in a product design team where this role doesn't exist and they're starting to see, cracks and maybe things being stretched in a way that could be optimized? What would be the kind of key considerations that they should try and have an answer for to take back to their executive team?
Yeah, I think number one is outlining what the role of design ops is. And one of the questions that came up when I was kind of going back to the exec team on it was, well, what's the difference between a design manager and a design ops manager? Is it not the same thing? Do they not do the same thing? But no, it's very different. So you have to be very clear and specific about mapping that out and helping them understand that. And it kind of just worked out as well is that, Simone had joined the team like over a year ago now, isn't it? A year and a half. And when Simone joined the team, she started getting involved in a lot of the community of practice work that we were doing, and we just seen so much progress in it, and there's some like really, really fantastic work. So I think you have to as well understand the strengths that you have within your team, and if there's certain individuals that could potentially step in to lead design ops if you're not going to go external and maybe look at hiring into the team. So that is definitely one thing that's going to make that a little bit easier, because it's not no new headcount as an example. So you can leverage the existing team that you have in order to achieve that.
Yeah, and it's important to, I think, know the team as well. Like when I came on board as a manager, like I was heading up the social and culture aspect of the team as well. So I have really good rapport with the team. It's like recruitment, hiring, interview, onboarding, like it's all those processes as well. So it's quite vast. Like there's a lot in it, and it's like making sure the designers have that trust in you as well. So I remember when you announced the team, like everyone was like, when he was talking about that role, all I could think about was Simone.
Yeah, it was funny because when I did announce the team, everybody just talked about Simone. It's like, well, that was, you know, so
it'd be worse if you hadn't picked her.
Everybody would be like, oh shit.
Yeah, it worked out okay. So
I want to get onto Design Fest as a concept, just, you know, for people to start thinking about, you know, their own orgs and how they might do something differently and harness creativity. But like to close out on the DevOps thing, like a part of
Design Ops.
Sorry, Design Ops. Sorry,
you've just got a promotion as well.
Sorry. So as with, like, in order to scale, you have to systemize. So what's the system behind that? I know you talked about a design system. So how is that different from how you've worked before, and what value is that adding? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, with a design system in particular, yeah. So this is another thing that we've kind of started to build out, I would say, over the last year and a half. And to be honest, we're probably a little bit late to the party with building out a design system, but it becomes a point, you know, in any kind of software life cycles point where you have to start to bring consistency as you begin to scale. So obviously Workhuman have grown so much over the last number of years, and so has our product and our product experience. But without it really established design system in place, it's very hard to try and knit together and keep the consistency of the components, of the experience and everything together, especially when you have so many designers working on different parts of the application. So we've started to build out a really good design system, and it's a journey. Like, it takes time to build it out, but I think we've done an incredible job in terms of where we are at the moment, and we're starting to see that consistency proliferate through the whole product experience now, which is fantastic.
Is it harder to put a system in place when you're leaning into creative skills? Because the very nature of creativity is individual, right? So, you know, is that hard to, you know, to put guardrails in place without losing, you know, are people feeling like they're losing a sense of their creative freedom?
That's a great question. I think yes is the answer. There is an element of that because, you know, with having a design system in place, you have to have a team responsible for that. And we do. We have a platform team where there's 3 designers, and they manage, they design out, they build, they work with other teams around their whole design system. So the way they govern what other teams are doing. So if one designer's been, you know, a little bit too creative, let's say, and they maybe need to rein it back a little bit, they'll discuss that and have a conversation.
They're going to know who you're talking about now when they hear this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, because I guess, you know, systemizing, scaling processes, you know, that's, you know, the leaning into automation and consistency, and that's the win back, right? So, like you talked earlier about you know, the role of product designs promote the ideation and creativity and design, not just in the design teams or in the engineering or product groups, but beyond that into the business. So, you know, we were in this thing called Design Fest. You run it. I actually participated this year for the first time. It was really enjoyable. But tell us a little bit about how that came about.
0 ideas came from you.
0 idea. Well, we didn't win. We thought we'd win, but we didn't.
I'll tell you about it once you don't bring up any of the pictures of me in the city costumes.
No, we definitely won't. But just if there's people out there and maybe they're working in a product design team and perhaps not, you know, getting the level of interaction or engagement or benefiting from innovation and creative ideas from people who are really close to the process, but not necessarily, you know, in a design function. Tell us about how that came about and what are the wins that you've gotten from that if people have, you know,
I'd simplify this from, it's a hackathon for design.
Yeah. It's absolutely a hackathon for design.
Thanks.
Yeah. It actually used to be called the Human UX Hackathon, and we changed it to Design Fest.
Design Fest better.
Just to rebrand
for
it.
us non-Workhuman people, I just need to...
Exactly, yeah. Well, that's it. So it really came about the whole idea of just kind of bringing together cross-functional groups within the organisation to kind of show them what we do as a design team, but also to leverage the creativity of the organisation to bring new ideas to life. So the way it works is we basically form about 8 to 12 different groups within the organisation, probably about 8 people on each team, and each group is headed up by 2 product designers, and they lead the teams book one day and they do a full design sprint for the whole day. So they start with an idea or a concept, they go through ideation, sketching, they arrive at a kind of consensus, and then they say, okay, well, this is what we're going to prototype. And then the designer or the designers in the team will work to the prototype for next maybe day or two. And then they'll present that back to the organization and back to the company. So everybody, all the exec team, everybody in the organization's on the call, and you can see everybody in every group then presenting the ideas that they had. And generally it's geared around a team as well. So one of the teams was around surprise and delight. All right, so how do we bring surprise and delight into our product experience? What does that look like? And some of the ideas we got were phenomenal. It was really, really good. And some of what I spoke about around the internal mobility as well were people who participated within Design Fest.
It's also a stealth internal mobility hiring thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people are onto me now.
Yeah, they are definitely onto
When's the next Design Fest?
So I have to give a shout out to Michelle Daly, a lady I work with closely. So her team won. She reminds me regularly. So we thought we had a great idea, and then we saw the other ones, and it was really, really, really interesting that how, people just solved that challenge in really, really different ways. So if people are out there and they don't have like a business engagement program, for want of to take all the creativity out of it, make it sound really boring, like that they should really be thinking about how they access those creative ideas from other parts of the business, right?
Absolutely, yeah. What was your take on that? What did you?
Yeah, people loved it, like any of the feedback. So I participated back in the first one, I think, that I was in August. And on my team, there was actually a woman on my team, and from that, she was in operations. She enjoyed it so much, she went and she studied in the UX Design Institute, and then she came back and she did an internship with us. She was allowed to do an internship for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So people absolutely loved it. It was, being part of a group. So, chatting together, like coming up with the ideas. People were really proud of their ideas, and then actually presenting it in front of the exec level, because the designers do the prototype and that, but then, everyone else in the group has to kind of present it back. And I think it's a real buzz.
Yeah, but you had a lot of people who don't work within technology. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz effect, revealing the curtain. It's an insight into how the technology teams work, and it can be just so interesting as well for a lot of other organizations and groups and departments to kind of get.
But even simple
to
frustrations of people within the business of saying, "Well, I'd love to see something like that a bit better," and that opportunity will always, it doesn't matter if you're pushing spreadsheets all day or you're whatever you're doing. If you have a fundamental like for the business or the product that you work in, you're going to try and get like really good ideas. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, that like people who are close to a process, that's where innovation happens. Like you can have big bang innovation and it's great, but 1,000 tiny innovations are better than one huge program. So yeah, harnessing the ideas and creativity.
A lot
people.
Cheaper as well.
Yeah, a lot cheaper. But also what was interesting for me is there was a lot of new starters as well. So it was also a great induction for people to connect with people in cross-functional
That's
groups.
a great show. I think almost half the people who we have participate this year were only in the company in the last 12 months, which is really cool.
You're both heavily involved in design, UX. What's 2 years down the road? What product design wasn't even really talked about 3 years ago, say. So what would you see as the kind of next iteration of that department or of that role? Or, even UX designers call themselves now product designers. They even dropped the UX or the UI side. They just want to be known as product people. What is the kind of next step, or what should people be looking to do?
Have you got that question on your list? Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I'd just like to point out, if you're doing it 10 years and it's only 3 years, that makes him an innovator. He's going to latch onto that like he's an early adopter.
What I will talk about, though, is that product design aspect of it in terms of shifting, because we used to be called the UX team about 5 years ago, but there's a massive shift within, obviously, the industry to think about product design. And one of the reasons around that is because I see product design as an umbrella term that encapsulates a lot of different design disciplines. Yeah. So UX, UI, research, even design ops now is folded into that within our team. But as I said, like the thing with product design is it's that focus as well at the business level, not just from a UX and the user level. So that's why, and I think what's worked out really well for designers within Workhuman is we haven't brought in specifics around UX and UI separation roles. It's kind of almost like a full stack designer in a way. You will have some who are way better at UX. You will have some that are stronger than UI. But you just look at the projects and the scope and where the needs are, and you put the right individuals on that project, and that's how you manage it. So for me, yes, product design is an overarching umbrella term for a lot of different design disciplines that encapsulates the full design process.
But is it like, should people be continuing really kind of tech heavy kind of background, not like tech heavy, but like strong web design or web development mentality, bringing that into a design concept, or will it become more design centric with less, obviously with say low code, no code type businesses, that designer mentality be more important, do you think?
Yeah, I think for myself, coming from a development background, I coded for many years. I built lots of applications, but I think that definitely helps. And the reason why it helps is when you're within an embedded team of developers and engineers and everything else, it's just easier to have conversations if you kind of know a little bit about coding and stuff, but it's not a deal breaker. I mean, and so some teams that designers might be working on, it may be not that important. Yeah. So it just depends on the context. And I think low code, no code is a great example because the capabilities that I've seen in those applications are phenomenal. Being able to actually build enterprise ready and enterprise grade solutions just like without a single line of code, which is impressive.
And coming from a design background, Simone, would you echo that, or would you say kind of you look for more people with design aspects, or what way do you look at people's skills?
Yeah, no, I think it's, as Jared said, like it's kind of a mixture. So we do look at products as in like UX, UI, but, as you said before, like some people are coming from a branding background, a creative agency background, so it's slightly different. There are some designers who code, some don't, and there's always lots of innovation going on. Like there's AI, like there's VR, AR spaces, like for design, like there's kind of so much opportunity now for a designer that like things like Design Fest really help, where you can try and do something a little bit innovative. But yeah, I don't know, it's such a vast remit.
Is the traditional kind of designer gone then? Is it like, your graphic designer, is that job not needed anymore, that just kind of brings in, or do you still need that kind of conceptual world?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, we have like a branding designers on our team as well, a branding department. So, for our product, like they would put the client branding on that for a specific client. So there is still that element of creativity needed for sure. Like AI can't do everything, and you still need that human element.
No, I think that's a good way to close the circle. And thanks for sharing all this. And I think it's a discipline that lends itself really well to the future, tech job families. It's leaning into tools and technology, it's automating, it's low code, no code, but it's the human interaction, the human creativity, the human output that is the thing that can't be replaced. So I think for people looking at a future career in technology, this is a place that I think is going to come in even stronger.
Yeah, and fundamentally for product designers, like we're there for the user, like it's user experience. That's what we're designing for.
Great. Well, look, thanks for sharing.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. And you're doing great work. Keep it up.
Thanks. See you.
Thanks, Emil. Thanks for Simone and Gerard for joining us today in Dublin Tech Talks. Product is super interesting and evolving, as I said, in podcasts for the last 5 years. There is a Workhuman itself is a very engaging product, and the business model is very interesting. But what I took away most there is, engaging the whole company within product, doing a product fest or an Inspire Fest around what your product team is. Certainly ask your company about what they love about the product. Maybe a product hackathon within your own organization might come get some nice results for yourself. If that was of interest and you want to hear more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or listen to us on Spotify or Apple. Thanks a mil.